Hi everyone. Today we are going to study the first chapter from our history textbook, that is Bricks, Beads and Bones. This video is for the CBSE students of class 12th who have opted for history as one of their subjects. The Indian history of class 12th is divided into three parts. So the first part is ancient history, the second part is medieval history, and the third part is modern history. So we all know that this is the basic division on the basis of which the Indian history has been divided. The ancient history basically deals with the history of the first cities, the first civilizations, and so on. And the second, that is the medieval history, deals with generally the invasions, the foreign invasions that happened in India. For example, the establishment of the Delhi Sultanate, the establishment of the Mughal Empire. And the third, or the modern history, basically deals with the British Raj, the rules and policies and the advent of the British Raj and how they had ruled India for the 200 years time period. So right now we are starting with Indian ancient history, which is book 1 for class 12th, and today we are going to start with the first lesson, that is bricks, beads and bones. This is the first part of this lesson. In this part we would be covering the basics of this lesson, the archaeological terms that have been used in this lesson, and also the agricultural strategies of the Harappans at that particular point of time. This lecture has been recorded in English language for the convenience of those who are more comfortable with English. In case you feel that a mixture of Hindi and English would work better for you, then the video for the same has been uploaded in one of the playlists and you can access it from the I button on the top. So first let us understand the topic, because whenever we give a particular piece of literature or a particular piece of study, a particular topic, what we mean to do is to provide a summary, a summarized view on that particular subject which we are discussing in that uh, piece of paper or that particular chapter. So why this chapter has been named Bricks, Beads and Bones? So basically if we see, there are three components of the topic, that is bricks, beads and bones. So when we talk about bricks, beads and bones, these are the three form of archaeological evidences which majorly provide us information about the Harappan civilization. So basically if we see, these are the early civilizations, or we can say that these exist in the period where writing was not prevalent, though we have found a lot of seals with the Harappan script on it. What we need to understand is the Harappan script has not been deciphered yet, because of which we don't have any literary source for the understanding or the reconstruction of the past of that civilization or the history of that particular period. So we basically rely on bricks, beads and bones from this civilization to understand and to reconstruct the social differences, the society during this civilization. So bricks, beads and bones are the three important artifacts or the three important archaeological evidences which are used to reconstruct the history of Harappan civilization. And this is because the script has not been deciphered yet. So the moment the archaeologists are able to decipher the script of the Harappan civilization, maybe we'll have 2 times, 3 times or 4 times the knowledge which we are having access to right now. Now let us understand some of the archaeological terms that have been used in this lesson. So the first term is culture. So basically when we see this is the basics of this particular subject. So when we talk about history, archaeology is an important part of history, because archaeology deals with excavation, recovering of artifacts, discussing with the with respect to the various stratigraphic layers that are found. So in that case, if we use the archaeological terms in our various chapters, it becomes difficult for us to understand if we don't understand the basics behind it. So first we'll understand the archaeological term that are used throughout the lesson, so that it is a little easier for you to understand. So the first archaeological term is culture. So now if we try to see the word culture with the present connotations, we'll realize that culture is basically anything which relates to a distinct style, a specific geographical area, and a specific period of time. So whenever a particular type of thing or a particular type of object or a particular type of art is distinct in style, which is not found anywhere else all over the world, which is restricted to that specific geographical area and which is found in a specific period of time is referred to as culture. So if for example we see that, because I reside in Pune, so here some particular kind of art forms such as the saris of Maharashtra are really famous, so they form a part of the Maharashtrian culture. Also, if we say about the Kolhapuri chappal, so the Kolhapuri chappal is found only in Kolhapur all over the world. So they have that distinct style which gives them that particular identification that they belong from the city of Kolhapur. They are restricted to that specific geographical area of Kolhapur, though now because of the advent of trade and communication, the growth of trade and communication, they are being exported to other parts of the world also. But if we see the production of that particular kind of footwear is being done in Kolhapur only still. So it is restricted to the city of Kolhapur, and it started its production from a specific period of time. So this is basically culture in the present connotation. Now if we look at it from the historical point of view or from the point of view of the Harappan civilization, that is in context to our lesson, the Harappan culture is basically the culture that was found between circa 2600 BCE to 1900 BCE. Now here the small c which I speak of as circa basically means approximation. So because we don't have any written evidence about this particular time period or these particular civilizations, as the script has not been deciphered, archaeologists have given us an estimate as to what would have been the time period in which this particular civilization flourished. So the time period which we right now feel to be true is circa 2600 BCE to 1900 BCE. So this was the time where the Harappan culture has been found. So Harappan culture is the culture which is found. So what is the distinct style? As we'll see, distinct pottery made of steatite, different kind of beads, steatite, micro beads, all these are of distinct style which is found only in the Harappan civilization. Next is the specific geographical area, which is the geographical area of the Harappan civilization or the Indus Valley civilization, and a specific period of time which we see as circa 2600 BCE to 1900 BCE. So Harappan culture is the culture which is found from Harappan civilization from this particular time period. Now there have been cultures which have been found, cultures basically as in objects or artifacts which have been found before 2600 BCE as well. So these objects or these artifacts have been classified under the early Harappan culture, that is the culture that existed before the Harappan civilization flourished. And then there is late Harappan culture which is found after 1900 BCE, which refers to the artifacts or the production of certain objects which started after the downfall of the Harappan civilization or after the end of the Harappan civilization. So these are totally different actually from the Harappan civilization, but because we see the Harappan civilization as a major mark in the ancient Indian history, we see to it that the early Harappan culture and the late Harappan culture are identified with the cultures that existed before and after the civilization. So we need to understand that the early Harappan culture has nothing to do with the Harappan culture. The late Harappan culture has also nothing to do with the Harappan culture. These are just objects that have been found before the Harappan civilization and that have been found from the periods after the Harappan civilization. And to distinguish the Harappan culture from these two cultures, we would now call the Harappan culture as the mature Harappan culture, or the culture that was found when the Harappan civilization flourished at its peak. So I hope you understood the meaning of the word culture. Basically, we need to associate it with a kind of object that is related to a specific geographical area, a specific period of time, and which has a distinctive style which is not found in any other part of the world. Now the Harappan culture and the regions. So herein we'll talk about the major artifacts which form a part of the Harappan culture and also the major regions which were a part of the Harappan culture. Though further in the lesson we would observe that Harappan civilization was a really planned civilization. So we can't give the importance to some particular regions. So basically we'll talk about some important places, but if we see on a broader scale, every place had an importance of its own, because every place had a different function to perform. So first we'll talk about the Harappan culture. So basically the objects such as seals, beads, vase, stone blades, baked bricks formed a part of the Harappan culture. So here beads, bricks, these all were a part of our lesson, the top title of our lesson. So this we know that these two objects, beads, actually three objects, beads, bricks and bones, form an important part of the Harappan culture. Apart from these, seals are a very important part of the Harappan culture, as we would see further in the lesson. Because of the seals, we have the Harappan script. The Harappan script has been found to be written on the seals, and that is how the archaeologists know that there was a particular script that was used in the Harappan civilization, and they're trying to decipher it. There has been a lot of research going on that till now. So seals were another important part of the Harappan culture. Apart from these, beads were also an important part of the Harappan culture. So further in the lesson, we would see various methods which were used to produce beads, how the various raw materials for the beads were procured, and after that we'll see stone blades. So stone blades were basically the tools for the Harappan people. They were basically used to shape the beads, to flake the beads. So that is what we'll also see in the further part of the lesson. And apart from these were the weights which were used to weight the different items that were traded in the civilization. After that, we'll see the important sites of the civilization. So when we talk about the sites, we need to keep in mind that these are only some of the sites, though every site had its own importance because of a varied function. But these were some of the important sites, and these were Mohenjo-daro, Chanhu-daro, Nageshwar and Balakot, and Dholavira, Lothal, and Kalibangan. So these were some of the important sites where we see Mohenjo-daro as a major urban center. Chanhu-daro was a craft production center. Nageshwar and Balakot again were craft production centers. Dholavira, Lothal, Kalibangan, we'll read about all these sites in the further part of the lesson. So now we'll basically come to the subsistence strategies. Now we'll basically talk about the subsistence strategies. Now whenever the word subsistence comes into the discussion, we always think about the ways human beings would have survived. Subsistence basically refers to survival of the human beings, and that is because whenever human beings or a human society develops at some particular place, the first question which comes to our mind is how would they have procured their food. So for example, if we see last year also in class 11th when we studied about the Harappan civilization, in class 11th when we studied about the earliest human beings on the earth, how they started from Australopithecus and all those categories. So we'll see that the most important part for the survival of the human beings was their food. Shelter and everything came afterwards. So herein we are going to study what were the survival strategies for the Harappan people. So we'll see first of all that Harappan people were dependent on a wide range of plant and animal products. Now, how do we get information about what kind of plants and what kind of animal products would they have consumed? Because this is way beyond in the past. So we don't have, and also we don't have any written account about it. So if we talk about some other, maybe if we see the medieval period where we have a lot of written accounts and a lot of pictorial data, we know what kind of food they consumed, how they procured it. Even with the cities in the Ganga Valley, we know from some of the other travelogues that this is how people procured their food. So we have at least some kind of information. But because this civilization, we don't have much of literary sources, and as I told you, we have to mostly rely on the artifacts or the articles that have been found during excavation. So the same goes with plant and animal products. Now how we are going to see? So the first thing which we need to understand is the subsistence strategies, that is the food habits, are basically reconstructed by archaeobotanists and archaeozoologists. So first we'll see about plant products. So we know that the study of plants according to biology is called as botany. So the reconstruction of the consumption about what the Harappans used to consume as plant products was done by archaeobotanists, and they did this by studying the charred grains and seeds. So charred were basically which were either decomposed or which were which were basically decomposed, and we can also say that which were kind of burnt. So charred refers to both burnt and decaying seeds. So by studying these burnt and decaying seeds, archaeobotanists came to a conclusion that they consumed wheat, barley, lentil, sesame and millets. Now, wheat, barley, lentil and sesame was found scattered throughout the settlement. That means either they were grown at a particular place and they were very fast to reach other parts of the civilization, or they were grown in small patches throughout the civilization, and that is how they have been found scattered throughout the civilization. So this particular thing we need to understand from the archaeologist's point of view, that whenever you find a particular thing concentrated at a place, that gives us some particular insights into that particular place. So for example, if 1000 years from now I'm finding a lot of pens and pencils buried under the ground, I can easily conclude that there would have been a school at this particular place. So similarly, when archaeologists find something which is scattered throughout the settlement, they would see it as something that was very common. On the other part, if they are finding some particular things from only some particular parts of that particular civilization, then they would conclude that this was restricted to this so and so place only. So wheat, barley, lentil and sesame were scattered throughout the settlement, whereas millets were found only in the sites of Gujarat. Basically, it was found in the sites of Gujarat. Now talking about the animal products. The animal products were reconstructed by archaeozoologists. So if we go according to biology, we know that zoology is the study of animals. So that is how we can relate. So basically archaeo is the common word because they are involved with history and excavation. That is why we are using the word archaeo here. And along with that, when we join botanist, it means the study of plant products. And when we join zoologist, it means the historical study of animal products. So archaeobotanists have provided us information about plant products, and archaeozoologists have provided us information about animal products. And archaeozoologists have studied the bones of various types, and that is how they have come to various conclusions about the subsistence strategies of the Harappans. So we'll see that first, what kind of animals were in basically consumption or in use. So these were cattle, sheep, goat, buffalo, pig, boar, deer and gharial. So from this list, cattle, sheep, goat, buffalo, pig, studies show that these were domesticated. On the other hand, boar, deer and gharial were giving out signs of wilderness. So we see that cattle, sheep, goat, buffalo, pig, all these animals were basically domesticated, and boar, deer, gharial, all these species were wild. So this they have come to conclusions by studying the bones of these animals. So we need to understand that archaeobotanists have given us the information about plant products by studying charred grains and seeds, and archaeozoologists have given us the information about the various kind of animal products that were under consumption by studying the bones of various types. So this is at a glimpse about subsistence strategies of the Harappan people. Now we'll move on to the agricultural technologies. So when we say some particular civilization or so and so group of people were consuming grains, there had to be farmers, there had to be people who were involved in the production of these particular grains. And along with farmers, we need some particular kind of technologies so that agriculture could flourish here easily. Now, as we observe, most of the Harappan sites are located in the arid and semi-arid parts of India and Pakistan. So when we talk about the arid and semi-arid parts, there are a lot of arrangements that need to be done because the land is not that fertile. For example, if we talk about some 1000 years later, when the cities in the Ganga Valley developed, it would have been easier for them to develop because in that part the Ganga River was there. Now, nonetheless, the Indus River was also here in the Indus Valley civilization, but there are a lot of sites which are not adjoining the Indus Valley civilization, which are not adjoining the Indus River. So we see that some of the sites are very much away from the Indus River. So how agriculture would have taken place at these diverse sites, that is what we are going to see in the part agricultural technologies. So first is the use of bulls. So we have found the representation of bulls on various terracotta sculptures and seals, which has given us the hint that maybe bull was known and it was used for plowing. So archaeologists, by seeing the representation of bulls on terracotta sculptures and seals, have come to the conclusion that bull was known to the people and it would have been used for plowing the agricultural fields in the civilization. So if we see from this diagram or this particular picture, these are some of the artifacts that have been recovered. So if we see here, these portray a pair of bullocks which might have been used for plowing. That is what the archaeologists conclude. Also, if we see at this particular place, these two seals, they do look like, you know, bulls or oxen. So this gives us the conclusion that maybe the bull was known and they were used for plowing. Also, the terracotta models of plow have been recovered from Cholistan and Banavali. Now, as we are preparing for our CBSE class 12th board exam, we need to be very much familiar about some of the map work that is generally asked in the exam. Now, as a student, I always feel it really difficult to mug up the map at that, you know, all together. So I try to, this is a strategy which I use to learn the map, that while I'm going through the chapter, I try to learn each and every site as I read about it. So for example, now I have read about Cholistan and Banavali. So now only Banavali is in our syllabus. Cholistan is not there for map marking. So we'll see Banavali right now only where it is on the map of India, and we'll try to recollect it when we'll next time see the same map of the civilization. So here we'll try to locate Banavali on the map of India. So we'll see that Banavali is in Haryana and it is very close to the border of Rajasthan. So we need to remember this particular point, that this particular point is Banavali and it is very close to the border of Rajasthan. So just for a hint, which we need to sometimes design to learn the maps, which I generally design, this big U has a cut after it. So from this cut we need to go directly down and towards the border of Rajasthan. Here is our Banavali. So this is how we'll try to remember Banavali and mark it on the map of India. Now coming back, so terracotta models of plow have been found in Cholistan and Banavali. This basically tells us that maybe the plow was known, the plow was used, as there have been small models of plow made of terracotta that have been found in Cholistan and Banavali. Next, very important, which has basically, you know, like we cannot come to a conclusion if we get only one hint. If you get various hints and a concluding hint, that is how archaeologists come to a final conclusion. So first, we got bulls, the representation of bull on various terracotta sculptures and seals. Next is that we found terracotta models of plow in Cholistan and Banavali. Now, these two particular finds hint to the fact that there would have been the knowledge of plowing with the people. But now, what testifies this knowledge is the fact that we have found plowed fields in Kalibangan. So now plowed fields means the art of plowing was known, and that means our previous two assumptions that bulls were used for plowing as terracotta models of plow have been found are considered to be true, because we have found plowed fields at Kalibangan. Now what is so special about these fields is that there are two sets of furrows at right angles. So basically if one particular plowed structure moves like this, then the other plowed structure moves like this. This basically indicates the presence of multi-cropping. That means the art of multi-cropping was also known to those people, and that is how they would have grown 2 or 3 crops at some particular point of time on that same field by using this art of multi-cropping. And this is evident by the two set of furrows which are found at right angle, which indicates that 2 crops were grown together in the same field. Now next is the traces of canals which have been found in Shotogai. Now Shotogai is a Harappan city or a Harappan settlement in Afghanistan. So regarding Shotogai, we need to remember two things. First is that the traces of canals have been found over here, and the second is that Shotogai was a very rich source, a very famous source of lapis lazuli at that time. If we recall from our last year's lessons, lapis lazuli was a precious stone which was blue in color, and if you are able to recall, King Enmerkar used to send his messengers with his messages written on clay tablets to some far off places to trade in lapis lazuli. So, as we'll see further in the lesson, as we'll see further how Harappans had contacts with some distant lands, which Mesopotamian civilization was also a part of, we'll see that Shortughai was a major source of lapis lazuli, and Harappans used to deal in lapis lazuli with the Mesopotamian people. So Shortughai is important for two things. Number one, traces of canals have been found over here, and number two, it was a source of lapis lazuli. So these are the two things that we need to remember about Shortughai. Now, traces of canals would suggest that irrigation was prevalent, that irrigation was used in this particular civilization, and the reason being that most of the sites, as I told you, were in the semi-arid and arid areas. So for agriculture to flourish, some amount of irrigation was required, which has been testified by the finds of canals in Shortughai. Also, there have been water reservoirs which have been found in Dholavira, and these tell us that water would have been maybe stored for agricultural activities, because maybe water would not have been available throughout the year, and that would have been the reason why water was stored for various agricultural activities, which is evident from the water reservoirs that have been found in Dholavira. So even if we see it today in parts of Rajasthan or in parts of Gujarat where there is a lot of water scarcity, people have underground tanks, people have overhead tanks, people have various methods to conserve water. So if we try to look at this information from the broader aspect, it is easier for us to absorb it and understand it. If we'll try to look at it only from the point of view that this is something which used to happen in the past, then it would be difficult to remember. But if we see it from the broader aspect, it is very easy to remember that if you find a particular canal at some particular place, that means water was required over there, because if water would have been available, then we would have either found a dried up river or a live river, but both were not found. And because agriculture was done, water was required, that is why canals were found. This is something which is more about our common sense. So then next, water reservoirs. So even today, in places where there is a scarcity of water, people store water in various ways. So similarly, in areas of the civilization where more water would have been demanded of, water reservoirs were found. So one such example is the water reservoir which is found in Dholavira. So with this, we conclude the first part of this lesson. I hope you have understood this lesson thoroughly. The link for the handwritten notes and the digital notes for this particular session are in the description box. You can download it from there. In the next session, we'll discuss why Harappan civilization is said to be an urban civilization. What is so special about, or what are the special features which make this civilization an urban civilization? So that's all for this lesson. Thank you and see you soon.